All right, let's put this right about there.
All right.
For now. Welcome to TruckU. I'm Matt Steele.
Hi, I'm Bruno Massel.
Now, this is the fuel tank out of this 2005 Chevrolet truck that our buddy had towed in here, and he dropped it off. He said, "Hey guys, it's all yours." We said, "What's wrong with it?" He said, "It doesn't work." We said, "Could you maybe be a tad more specific?"
Just a touch.
Right, you know, so he said that he could hear an electrical motor over the sound of the truck every now and then, and the fuel gauge wasn't working at all. Then when he quit hearing that sound, the whole truck wasn't working. So we think we pretty much have an idea, a pretty good idea of what the problem is.
Hence the fuel tank sitting in front of us.
Right.
All signs are pointing to a bad fuel pump, but to get to the fuel pump, you got to get the tank out, and before we can start diagnosing the fuel pump itself, we need to make sure that it's getting power. So what we did is pull the tank out of the way, and now what we're going to do now is check voltage going from the leads to the fuel pump itself. Now, I know you're thinking, well, why didn't you do that before you took the tank out?
Sure.
But the thing is, you can't get to the leads until you get the tank out of the way. So right now we're hooked up to the battery, and we're going to check the connector here. And we're getting voltage here, so power's coming to the pump. So I think you're right, buddy. It's got to be the fuel pump at this point.
Come on.
Once again, the Steele man gets it right. As you can see, Matt cleaned off our fuel tank here, and the whole reason behind it is that you don't want to contaminate the inside of the fuel tank once you get the pump out of the way. So you want to get all that dirt and debris out of the way first so it doesn't get into the tank itself. Now, the next thing you need to do is go ahead and take off some of these lines. Now, this evap line, you need a specialty tool to do so. So go down to your local parts store and you can pick these up for these little connectors. So that'll open up a little spring here and pop that off, and then we can go ahead and get the rest of the stuff off. So
they've got this lock ring right here, and when you go to the dealership and they do that, they've got a nice lock ring removal tool, you know, but the rest of the population, the other 99% of the people in the world, don't have that same tool, but pretty much everybody's got something like this. So you just want to get in there, you just keep working on it, and eventually that will get spun out, and then we can lift it out of there. So,
well, let's empty out the fuel inside, but then I can bring it over to the table and do a visual inspection and see if everything looks okay.
Cool.
So we've got the old fuel pump out sitting here on the table, and we're going to diagnose it to find out what's going on. Now, at first glance, everything looks to be okay, but we need to run a fuel electrical test to see what's going on. So first thing we want to do is check the fuel sending unit to make sure that we're getting resistance, to see if that's okay. So we've got it hooked up. We're going to check the ohms, and right now we're getting a reading. This should grow as the float level goes up. And what we're seeing right now is right there's the problem. We lose the resistance, and that's why we're not getting the fuel level gauge in the truck to work. So that seems to be the problem there. That's checking out. Now we still need to find out why the truck won't start. Now we think it's because the pump is bad, but we need to test it first. So what we're going to try and do basically is jump it by putting 12 volts to it. By doing so, you should hear the thing kick on. You should hear it run. Well, let me get in here on the connector, and we got a whole lot of nothing going on. So basically the fuel pump, died, it wore out. Now this truck's got 150,000 miles on it, and besides that, this truck is used on work sites where it sits idling for a long period of time. So beyond the 150,000 miles, it's got a lot of idle time. So it could be just as simple as the brushes wore out inside the pump. So it's no big deal because we can replace it with a brand new one from Delphi. And we're going to right now look at some of the evolution of fuel pumps. Before you get to the Mac Daddy, it all started out back here with the mechanical pump. So to lead us through this, I brought in a ringer here today. He is the crew chief of the number 5 Chevrolet. It's Alan Gustafson. Alan, take us through what we see here today. Now, this is something that you're pretty familiar with because it's something you used to run a few years ago.
Yeah, we're very familiar with that style of fuel pump, the mechanical diaphragm style fuel pump that bolted to the side of the block. And that's very similar to what we ran up until about 3 or 4 years ago. Very common in carbureted applications, the early 80s, that require a lower level of fuel pressure. So we're very familiar with that, and that's where production cars were and where we've kind of evolved from. As fuel injection came into play, the fuel pressure requirements were a lot higher. So you see these inline electric fuel pumps that became very popular in the late 80s, early 90s on your production cars. They create higher pressure, higher volume, inline electrical fuel pump. And that's even evolved further to this in-tank electric fuel pump. Same type situation, fuel injection, high pressure, high volume pumps. They've packaged it in tank for obvious reasons. It's closer to the fuel, a little better packaging for those applications. And now we've got to
the Mac Daddy, I like to call it, because it's all in one.
It is the Mac Daddy, very impressive piece of technology. Delphi supplies the manufacturers with. It's a self-contained unit that has the pump, the filter, the fuel pressure regulator, all in one. A cool side note to this, not only is it a nice package where everything's really close together, but you can drop that thing down into your fuel tank as it goes down your fuel tank, the pickup is right on the bottom of that fuel tank. So if the fuel level could be very, very, very low, and that pickup's right on the bottom, and you can get every little last drop of fuel in that fuel tank. And for us, that's a really big.
That's money for
it's
you
money.
guys.
It
That's
is.
what it
It
all comes
is.
down to.
We've won and lost races on very, very small amounts of fuel. Tiny last drop you can get to make it to the checkered flag without a pit stop. So on a production car, that's a great advantage. You can get all the fuel out of your tank so you can make it to that gas station. And if you're out there, stranded somewhere and you're looking for that gas station you can't find, of course, this will help you get there.
Okay, now you guys said that you outgrown this. Well, you haven't outgrown it, but you've actually relocated it more or less.
We have. We still use a mechanical pump. The issue we had with this pump is it bolted right to the side of the block, which is right next to the exhaust headers that are really high, 1300 degree exhaust headers, right next to our right front suspension.
Fuel heat, no bueno.
Yeah, fuel heat, no bueno. And then throw in a wall, which we contact every once in a while. So if we got in the wall, we suffer damage. There's a high probability that suspension pieces, tire, wheel could get into that fuel pump, fracture that fuel pump. Like you said, fuel and heat, no bueno, no good. Very spectacular, it's good TV, it's cool, but not really good when it comes to driver safety and a good finish. So we've located that to the back of the car, really close to the fuel cell, similar to what the production world did as they've moved their fuel pumps back close to the fuel tank and in the fuel tank. Ours sits right on top of the fuel cell now, short little line where the feed goes into the fuel cell. Cable drives it off of the engine, and it's a lot safer, more contained place, more centrally located, really hard to get to, hard to damage, and a lot safer for the drivers.
So it's still carbureted, so you still have a low pressure needs. I mean, it's sophisticated stuff you're dealing with. I'm used to high pressure stuff. I drag race, I've got methanol, I've got fuel injection, I've got turbocharged. I'm at 140 pounds of fuel pressure at high boost level.
Incredible.
So it's a completely different world, but I think you guys are going to be evolving your fuel pumps kind of like we've seen here, because I kind of hear rumors that you guys might be going fuel injection.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the way of the future. And now with the carburetor, it's low fuel pressure requirements. We don't need a lot of pressure like you do. You're pumping a lot more gas through your engine than we are. But as we go to fuel injection, they require higher pressure. They're more precise, and the higher pressure allows the fuel injectors to be more precise. And that's the way of the future, the direction we're going, and I'm sure we'll work through a lot of this evolution too.
Well, thanks for dropping some knowledge on us on how fuel pumps have evolved and why they have, but you're not getting away that easy. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're putting this guy to work.
Let's do it.
Hey, welcome back. Now we are ready to start getting the new fuel pump into place. Now keep in mind the fuel pump is a pretty important part of the vehicle. It's very integral in the whole equation of things, right? So you don't want to just go out there and get any old fuel pump when you're replacing it. Ideally, you want to get the OE factory replacement and put the same thing back in there that you had. Now, a lot of people will think, well, if I'm going to get the same factory part, I've got to go to the dealership and I've got to spend a lot of money. Well, that's not necessarily the case with Delphi, because think about it. Delphi are the guys that are actually sending them to the factories, right? And those are the ones that are being put in your truck. So now with Delphi, you can actually go to your major automotive retailers, get the same OE parts, put them back in your truck, and you can do it for a lot less money.
And that's what it's all about, saving a few bucks. I don't think a lot of people are aware that you can do that. Now, this pump we're putting in is a Delphi modular pump, and it's pretty much an all-in-one unit, where right here you can see that you've got the sending unit on the side. This is something we had a problem with the one we took out. This gives you your level of the fuel gauge, so this will take care of that. Now, you look inside this, you've got your fuel pump itself, and what it's doing is it's sending fuel right to the built-in regulator. Now, this is kind of neat because it's a returnless system, so what it's doing is it's only supplying the exact amount of fuel needed under load. In a traditional system, you've got a bypass where the fuel comes back around again back to the pump. This way, though, it reduces emissions, which is pretty cool.
Sure, and you've got your filtration down there in the bottom. You've got your fuel shutoff valve right there for when you're at the pump. Basically, with all the stuff going on right there, it's fuel management in a box is what it is.
I think we need to get this box sealed up soon, though, because these vapors are starting to get to me.
And we don't want that.
I think I'm seeing three of you.
We know how you get, right? O-rings in there.
Okay. There we go.
Then we can put this lock ring on there and then hook everything back up and it'll be good.